the day gravity finally won. For a long time, Earth was powerful, but not settled. Material moved, heat flowed, and mass shifted without final order. Then gravity finished what fire had begun. Even after heat learned to move underground, the planet remained internally unsettled. This matters because motion alone does not create coherence. Earth still needed a force capable of organizing everything at once, from the deepest core to the outermost surface. That force was gravity, working slowly and without interruption. Unlike heat, which drives change and creates instability, gravity pulls toward order. It does not create energy. It organizes matter according to density, and in doing so, it imposes structure on systems that would otherwise remain chaotic. As the interior cooled and circulation stabilized, gravity began tightening its hold. Dense materials sank more decisively toward the center, while lighter components rose and spread outward. Boundaries between layers sharpened, and the planet's internal structure became more distinct. Earth was no longer rearranging itself endlessly. It was settling into hierarchy. The core consolidated into a dense sphere of iron and nickel, the mantle organized into zones of varying viscosity and composition, and the crust differentiated into regions of greater and lesser density. This settling changed how energy moved. With a clearer core, mantle, and crust, heat followed predictable paths instead of wandering chaotically. The magnetic field strengthened as the core's motion became more coherent, shielding the surface from solar radiation and preserving the atmosphere that had taken so long to build. The dynamo effect, driven by convective motion in the liquid outer core, produced a magnetic field whose strength and stability depended directly on the gravitational organization of the planet's interior. At the surface, gravity's influence became visible in quieter ways. Mountains eroded, sediments accumulated, and mass redistributed itself toward equilibrium. Extremes softened over time. High places wore down. Low places filled in. Earth was smoothing itself, trading sharp instability for long-term balance. Every grain of sediment carried downhill by water or wind was gravity completing its work, redistributing mass from elevation to basin in a ceaseless pursuit of equipoise. This was not the end of change. It was the end of disorder. Without direction, gravity did not stop motion. It organized it, and in doing so, it locked Earth into a form that could endure far longer than chaos ever could. As gravity asserted this quiet dominance, Earth's systems began reinforcing one another instead of competing for control. The clearer separation between core, mantle, and crust allowed internal motion to follow stable patterns, reducing sudden shifts that once threatened the surface. Energy moved along established routes, guided by density and structure rather than chance. The planet's interior became a hierarchy of nested systems, each operated within constraints set by the layer above and below. This organization strengthened the planet's magnetic field, which acted as an invisible barrier against solar wind. Without it, charged particles from the sun would have stripped away the atmosphere over time, undoing billions of years of accumulation. Gravity held the atmosphere in place, but magnetism preserved it, forming a partnership that protected the surface from erosion by space itself. This dual protection was not designed. It emerged as a consequence of gravitational organization, one beneficial outcome layered upon another. Sediments continued migrating downhill under gravity's pull, collecting in basins and ocean floors. These deposits recorded Earth's history layer by layer, turning the surface into an archive rather than a blank slate. Rivers, glaciers, and wind became agents of redistribution, constantly moving mass toward equilibrium without destroying what already existed. The geological record that scientists read today exists because gravity consistently moved material into positions where it could be preserved. The oceans responded as well. Water flowed according to gravity's gradients, circulating heat and nutrients across the globe. Deep currents formed, linking distant regions into a single system that moderated climate and reduced extremes. The planet's surface processes were no longer isolated events. They were components of a coordinated whole. Ocean circulation became one of Earth's primary mechanisms for distributing energy, and gravity was its engine. What mattered most was predictability. Gravity made outcomes repeatable. Mountains eroded the same way again and again. Basins filled gradually instead of catastrophically. Change became something Earth could absorb without losing coherence. Predictability allowed systems to develop long-term patterns, and long-term patterns allowed complexity to accumulate. Gravity had not just won. It had unified the planet's motion into something sustainable. This growing predictability reshaped how Earth responded to disturbance. When forces acted on the planet, whether from internal motion or external impact, the results followed established pathways instead of cascading into uncontrolled chaos. Energy dissipated through known channels, and mass redistributed itself toward balance rather than fracture. The planet had developed what might be called structural resilience, the capacity to absorb disruption without losing its fundamental organization. The build-up toward this moment revealed a deeper transformation. Gravity was no longer simply pulling matter inward. It was coordinating time. Processes slowed to rates that allowed cause and effect to remain connected. Erosion, sedimentation, and tectonic motion unfolded on timescales that preserved continuity instead of erasing it. Earth could now remember what had happened before. Memory, in a geological sense, requires that the product of past events persist long enough to be encountered by future ones. Gravity made that persistence possible. Life, where it existed, benefited quietly from this order. Stable gravity-driven cycles ensured nutrients returned to the oceans. Climates fluctuated within limits, and habitats persisted long enough for adaptation to matter. The planet was no longer rearranging itself faster than biology could respond. The pace of change had been brought into alignment with the pace of adaptation, creating the temporal space in which evolution could operate. Even catastrophe changed character. Impacts and eruptions still occurred, but their effects were dampened by the planet's organized structure. Shock waves traveled through layered interiors instead of shattering everything at once. Recovery followed disruption more reliably than before. Earth had gained resilience through order. The same gravitational organization that made the planet stable also made it recoverable, ensuring that even severe disturbances did not permanently undo the structures that had taken so long to form. Earth was walking a narrow line between expression and destruction. The surface was no longer guaranteed, but it was no longer doomed either. The planet had reached a tipping point where survival depended on maintaining imbalance in the right places. The paradox of this era was that uniformity would have meant extinction, while imbalance, carefully distributed, meant preservation. The question was no longer whether Earth could hold a surface. It was whether it could keep holding it. The climax of this era arrived not with collapse, but with restraint. Earth did not eliminate its internal power. It learned how to vent it without surrendering the surface entirely. Volcanism became organized into recurring zones instead of erupting everywhere at once, allowing large portions of the planet to remain solid while energy escaped where it could be tolerated. This organization was the planet's first act of self-regulation, a geological discipline that emerged not from design, but from the accumulated consequence of billions of years of trial. This shift changed the meaning of stability. The surface no longer depended on silence or inactivity. It depended on controlled motion. By concentrating destruction into specific regions, Earth preserved continuity elsewhere. Land could now persist long enough to influence climate, atmosphere, and future structure. The surviving crust became the seed of permanence, the foundation upon which all subsequent geological history would be written. The resolution lies in what did not happen. The planet did not return to a global magma ocean. Its surface was scarred, reshaped, and repeatedly challenged, but never erased all at once. Earth crossed a threshold where loss became regional instead of total. That distinction between total erasure and localized destruction proved to be the most consequential boundary the planet would ever cross. This moment echoes throughout the planet's later history. The same principle would govern tectonics, climate regulation, and even biological resilience. Survival would no longer mean avoiding catastrophe. It would mean surviving it in pieces. Earth almost lost its surface. What saved it was not cooling, but control. Subscribe to join the journey.